Hello everyone, welcome again. Those of you who might have joined us late. My name is Brahmachari Devendra and Ms. Nayaswami Devarshi will be sharing with you this evening from the app Autobiography Yogi Daily Wisdom from my phone. So we share these teachings from Autobiography Yogi every other week on Fridays. So today is March 23rd. We are covering a week before and week after from March 23rd, the teachings, the lines from Autobiography Yogi from this app. I have chosen a couple of quotes from Autobiography Yogi. One is on March 20th. I will start from there. This is from chapter 12, and the chapter name is Years in My Master's Hermitage. Now, this is Swami Yukteswarji saying, he says, keen intelligence is two-edged. It may be used constructively or destructively, like a knife, either to cut the boil of ignorance or to decapitate one's self. Intelligence is rightly guided only after the mind has acknowledged the inescapability of a spiritual law. Now, here Yukteswarji, who himself was Gyan Avatar, he is saying few words on intelligence, how a person can use intelligence to get out of the delusion or go more into the delusion. And metaphorically, he is using an example of knife, that you can use the knife to do a surgery on yourself to remove the boil, or you can cut your own head and end yourself. So we can use discrimination, we can use intelligence, which is a sharp knife, to cut the delusion or get more into delusion. Now I will take some examples to illustrate this, how a constructive or destructive intelligence can help us go out of the delusion, get out of the delusion, or go into the delusion, more into delusion. Here's an example of Swami Kriyanandaji's life, that Swamiji, when he met Master, he was with Master for a few months maybe, and then Master wanted to go to India. And when Swamiji heard of this, he said that, oh, Master is going to India, but he heard that also that he is not taking Swamiji with him to India. So he got into mood that that Master does not love him. And he just met Master and he's leaving him here alone in Mount Washington. And he got into deep mood and he started to think that I am not a worthy disciple or something like that. He began to think and he got into deep mood. But then he realized that this is not good. I am in this mood. Do I feel good about this mood? And then he felt, I don't feel good about it. And then he sat down and then he focused his mind at the spiritual eye, and he felt within 5 minutes, all that mood was gone. Within 5 minutes. And so Swamiji knew, he felt that this mood was not good and what action he has to take to get out of that mood. So this is, you can say, an action, a positive action towards discrimination, towards intelligence, towards positive intelligence. Another example could be Swamiji, one time he met Swami Kriyananda. Swamiji means, when I say that, it's Swami Kriyananda. He was driving on a highway and he met an accident. His car hit a tree or something, it completely destroyed. And so he had to leave that car basically and take another vehicle. A bus was coming. He got into the bus and he was going and he was singing. As he was going in the bus, he was singing. The person who was with Swamiji, fortunately, when both of them, they were not hurt. And Swamiji was singing, and when the other person saw Swamiji singing, he said, Swamiji, you're singing, the car got completely destroyed and you have to spend so much money to fix it, and you're not sad? Swamiji said that his answer was, I'll be happy within a week, why not be happy now? And so that this is the positive intelligence, this is the constructive intelligence, to use ourselves to not to be in the mood, not to go into the delusion, but to come out of it. Let's take an example of a negative discrimination, a negative intelligence. That so this is again from Swami Kriyananda's life, that when he was a child, he did not like spinach. So he told his mother that green is the color of envy. The spinach is green color, so I don't want to eat spinach because I will have envious tendencies. And so he used this logic, he used that intelligence to avoid eating spinach in his own favor. Now that's a very simple example. Now people can use many different logics, their own intelligence to justify their likes and dislikes, their tendencies, their delusions. For example, in Bhagavad Gita, there is explanation. Swamiji says that he said that drinking and smoking is a very bad thing. But some people can say that, oh, at least I don't smoke, so I'm good. Or some people who don't smoke, that they drink, they can say that, oh, at least I don't drink or I don't smoke, I'm good. So we can use our own, that intelligence, we can use our discrimination to justify ourselves, justify our delusion many, many times. So we have to be very careful that how we use our intelligence, our discrimination. Master gave a prayer, which I would like to say, which we can use it many times when we are not sure which way we should go. Master said that I will reason, I will, and I will act. But guide thou my reason, will, and activity in everything that I do to the right path. Now this corresponds to the last sentence which Swami Yukteswarji is saying. He says, intelligence is rightly guided only after the mind has acknowledged the inescapability of a spiritual law. In this prayer, mind is acknowledging the divine presence, that there is divine, and we must cooperate with it to get out of the delusion. If we go against it, we suffer. So we must accept, the mind, the intelligence, the discrimination must accept that there are higher laws, there are spiritual laws, and we must cooperate with that. And as we cooperate with it, we'll be out of delusion, we'll find ourselves.
This reading is from the March 15th Daily Wisdom app reading from Autobiography of a Yogi. Those who are too good for this world are adorning some other. So long as you breathe the free air of earth, you are under obligation to render grateful service. He alone who has fully mastered the breathless state is freed from cosmic imperatives. In that last sentence, he alone who is freed from cosmic imperatives, only who has entered the breathless state, in the state of samadhi. This passage is one of the 2 or 3 from this entire book that I've used to guide my life, and it comes to mind very often in my life. For many years in America, I would do a lot of traveling with my wife when she was in the body, and we would travel and do a lot of programs, create initiations, and we lived in a very beautiful place, Ananda Village in California. And traveling and our service was sometimes very intense and challenging. And we would come home either at the end of a day or from a long, long trip, flying all night long and finally landing at home. And as we pulled into Ananda Village, it was a mantra for us, which was very simply grateful service. And it was from this passage in Autobiography of a Yogi. And so this phrase, grateful service, comes very often to my mind when I'm struggling with putting out energy, or my body is resisting or not cooperating with my ability to do a lot of traveling and sharing the teachings of our great masters. And so as long as we are here in the body, breathing the free air of this earth, we have the obligation to render grateful service. And what does this mean in your own life? It means that whatever you have abundantly, think of ways of sharing it with others and serving others. If you have abundant finances, think of ways of helping to uplift others. A child maybe who needs money to go to school, or as we do with our Paramhansa Yogananda Charitable Trust in Vrindavan. We help the thousands of widows there with medical care, with housing, but more importantly with love. The motto, the mantra there is dignity and divinity, because we don't only help their health and their food and their housing, but also give them love, give them divine love, respect, self-respect, because many of these widows have been abandoned and abused at times. And so look for ways to give to others and to render this grateful service. And it can be a smile. If you have an abundance of joy or compassion, share that with others, but always look to be uplifting others in some way and giving back to others. There was a woman who visited Ananda village once, and she was about to go back to her home country in South America. And she was praying to Yogananda ji, I want to know what I should be doing when I go back, what projects, what I can do with my life. And she was praying intensely enough that Yogananda actually appeared in form in front of her tent in response to her prayer. And he answered her prayer about what she should do when she went back home. And his answer was only one word. And it was this one word was give. That was simply his advice, give. And she took that advice and she went back home and she started looking for ways of giving. And it really changed her life, and it changed the direction of her life. And it was very interesting because he didn't tell her what to do. He told her the attitude to have, which was simply to give to others. And so you will find that if you have this attitude in your life of looking for people, situations to help, to give to, what happens is that even if you don't know what to do with your life, how to serve, how to help others, but if you just simply start looking for ways to give, you start entering into a flow of divine grace, because this generosity of the heart and this sharing and giving is of God, and it is in God. And so when we look for ways to help others, we get into this flow of divine grace, and we find that we start having more of what it is that we give. And sometimes people think, well, I don't have anything to give. Everyone has something to give, but you will find, more importantly, that let's say that you're a lonely person and you don't have friends. You will find that the best way to overcome that and to start having friends is simply to look for someone who's maybe perhaps even more lonely than yourself, someone on the street or somewhere, and give to them, give friendship, give compassion, give kindness. And you will find that that starts creating the magnetism in your own life that starts to draw divine friends. And so this attitude of rendering grateful service, of giving, really is the way to God. Because we all must act every day. We can't meditate 24 hours a day. And again, those who are no longer, who can go into the breathless state, only those are really not obligated to render grateful service. As long as we're breathing the free air of this earth and not having gone breathless, then we have this obligation. And so make this really a central part of your life, if it isn't already, of finding ways to give to others. And do it in God and with the Guru. One time Yogananda ji was taking on the karma of his disciples, and he couldn't walk properly, and he needed his disciples to carry him up and down the stairs as he was going. And he just expressed so much appreciation to his disciples for lifting him up and carrying his weight up the stairs. And the disciples said, Sir, how can you thank us for this? You're the one who has been giving so much blessing and so much help to us. And Yogananda just smiled very sweetly, and he just said, it's God serving God. And so when you give to others, when you render this grateful service, try to see it in the sense that it is the divine in you, looking at, recognizing, seeing the divine in the other person, and that it is God giving to God. And when you enter into this grateful service with this spirit and attitude, you will find that you enter into this flow of divine grace, of God giving to God. And then life becomes almost a play or a dance of God serving God, God giving to God. And then really this is the way to divine freedom, through seva, through service. Because what happens is that in the end, when we are in God in this way, and in this flow of grace, we start to become changed. This is why people who give generously really are the greatest benefactors of their giving. Because by entering into this flow of selflessness, this flow of generosity, this flow of divine grace, the giver is changed more than anybody else. So think in terms simply of giving. Give, love, serve. Have this almost as a daily attitude. And you'll find that if you just think in those terms, the right way to give to others, the right way to love others, the right way to serve others, will simply almost appear magically before you as you go through your day, as you go through your life. And so this isn't just an obligation, because obligation makes it feel like it's some heavy duty that we're forced to do. It's actually a gift of God that is given to us to be able to give to others and to share what we have with others. And so have this, again, as a mantra, grateful service. Because as long as we're breathing the free air of this earth, we must do that. We have the duty, the obligation, but also the joy to share what we have with others.
So now we'll take another, some other lines from Autobiography Yogi. This is from March 23 from the app. Now again, this is from chapter 12 of Autobiography Yogi, Years in My Master's Hermitage. Again, Yukteswarji is saying, destroy wrong desires now. Otherwise, they will follow you after the astral body is torn from its physical casing. Even when the flesh is weak, the mind should be constantly resistant. If temptation assails you with cruel force, overcome it by impersonal analysis and indomitable will. Every natural passion can be mastered. Now, here Yukteswarji is talking about that what keeps us bringing to this earth the cycle of birth and rebirth and death, and keep moving. The cycle is rolling. Is the desires that Master said that our subconscious mind, our spine, our astral spine, is extension of our subconscious mind, and in that spine, in that subconscious mind, all our habits, our likes and dislikes, our karmas, our desires, everything are stored there. And when we die, they don't die, and when we come back to life in a body, we come back with those same desires, same tendencies, same habits, and so there is a need to get rid of the desires. It's not the karmas that binds us, but it's the desires that binds us. Why? We can see there are many saints, they are Jivan Mukta, they still have the karmas, but they don't affect them. So what is binding to us, to this physical body, to this wheel of birth and rebirth, is the desires. Once we are finished with the desires, we are not forced to come to this body, to this physical body, but we can come on our own record as we wish. So here he says that, Master says that even when the flesh is weak, the mind should be constantly resistant. Master often said that, I don't ask you to overcome the temptation, I ask you to resist it. That it's a step-by-step process that we slowly resist it, and by resisting, we become stronger. So don't think in terms of just overcoming anything, any desires or any tendencies in one shot. We resist it slowly, and by resisting it, we develop the strength. Just like wrestlers become stronger by fighting with a stronger wrestler, but if he just fights with a weaker wrestler, he doesn't become strong. So we have to fight with a stronger wrestler to test our strength, to become stronger. Then he says, Yukteswarji says, if temptation assails you with cruel force, overcome it by impersonal analysis and indomitable will. That, of course, he was a Jnanavatar, so he's talking about impersonal analysis and indomitable will. How do you develop this impersonal analysis and indomitable will? How do you develop that? How do you get it? This path, these teachings of the Kriya Yoga that helps us when we practice meditation, when we practice Kriya Yoga, we learn to detach ourselves from our body, from our mind, from our habits, from our tendencies. And by doing that, we become not so much bound by personalities, but we see ourselves not as the body, but not as a personality, but something as a soul. So as we practice meditations, as we practice Kriya Yoga, go on the spiritual path, we raise our consciousness, we become impersonal, we don't see as a bundle of flesh and bones ourselves, and so we sharpen our impersonality, you can say. We sharpen our discrimination, and by that's what Sri Yukteswarji is meaning, that you overcome it by impersonal analysis. And then that's how we develop that impersonal analysis. Then he says also, by indomitable will. How do we develop will? That of course, when we practice meditation, that we find our mind so restless that it goes here, it goes there. But as we practice, we develop our willpower. We control our mind. We develop, at the same time, we are developing our willpower, which is the center is here, the kutastha. We focus our mind so much here also through the meditation that we are developing our willpower also. And of course, we can apply the willpower in our daily task, that once we start doing something, we should not leave it halfway. We must finish what we have started. So we can apply these principles also in daily life. I'll tell you one story for this lines which Master Swami Yukteswarji is saying. Master had a disciple, his name was Jeffrey Herb, or Herb Jeffrey. He was a famous Hollywood actor. He came to Master and he says that I come to your ashram, I see so many good souls, and such a lovely place, such a sacred vibration here. And I don't feel like coming here because I have so many evil habits, that what do I do? And he says to Master, Master means Yogananda, and Master says, do you smoke? He says, yes, I smoke. He says, you may continue with that. And then he asked Herb Jeffrey that, do you drink? He says, yes, I drink. He says, you may continue with that. And then he says, do you mix promiscuously with the other sex? He says, yes, I do that. He says, you may continue with that. And Herb Jeffrey says, what do you, wait a minute, what are you saying? You mean to say that I just come here and I keep doing all these evil things? Master said, you can keep doing that, but what I say, what I ask you to practice, if you continue to practice that, I don't guarantee that you will be able to continue what you have been doing in the world. And so Master was saying that we don't want to just fight with our desires and tendencies, but we also must develop our positive sides, divine side. And so by developing that, those things will all automatically start falling away. So don't fight darkness with a stick, that just always fighting with it, but bring the light, and darkness will disappear, desires will go away.
This next reading is from March 16th, last week. It's Paramahansa Yogananda. The hard core of human egotism is hardly to be dislodged except rudely. With its departure, the divine finds at last an unobstructed channel. In vain it seeks to percolate through flinty hearts of selfishness. So Yoganandaji is saying here that human egotism, it tends to try to hold on and defend itself, and it's not driven out or dislodged except very rudely. And so for ourselves, as usual, it's good to apply these to ourselves rather than to other people, and not to be going around looking for the ego to drive away and dislodge people's egos and be rude with other people. Just introspect and turn it on ourselves. And when life treats us rudely, just take it upon yourself that any reaction is from the ego. Any emotional reaction, any defensiveness, it's the ego that's really responding, feeling this, and reacting. And so don't identify with that reaction. Try to avoid reacting when things happen to us. I was on an airplane recently, as I'm always on airplanes, it seems like. I do a lot of traveling. And I was putting my luggage up in the overhead bin. And this guy was just being next to me was being very insensitive and just oblivious. And he just elbowed me so hard. I just about knocked me over. It was so hard. It was really a rare thing to be hit this hard by someone. And he sort of apologized, but he didn't really care that much that he hit me so hard. And my first reaction was, here I am, and I wasn't thinking too hard on this way, but here I am serving the guru on this spiritual mission, and some guy elbows me and almost knocks me down on my back. But then I caught myself and I thought, well, don't think this way. You're just a person. Any reaction that you have comes only from ego and from pride. And just give this to God and bless this person. They're ignorant in what they're doing, and just go on your way and ignore it. And so this is how we should react when the world treats us rudely, because it will. Now, the other way around this is to not wait until the world treats us rudely and try to offer our ego to God. And this is again talking about giving to others. When we act selflessly in all that we do, then the ego starts to be dissolved, and it doesn't have to be knocked away rudely with a club or a stick or a punch or an elbow. And so when things happen, don't react, but at the same time act with a sense of selfless giving to others. And this is the way to release the hold that the ego has on us. Now, the other thing that Yoganandaji says here, he says that with its departure of the ego, the divine finds at last an unobstructed channel. In vain, it seeks to percolate through flinty hearts of selfishness. And so this is the great motivation for letting the ego go. Swami Kriyananda had a really strong practice in his life that he taught us and that he wrote about in his book, The Renunciate Order for a New Age. And he said that when you're attacked, accused of something, and when he said he practiced this, he said, do not defend yourself. He said, even if what you're being accused of is wrong, he said, don't defend yourself. He said, the ego wants to defend, is proud. Just like I was on that airplane and this person roughly elbowed me out of the way. Yeah, I mean, he was wrong in doing what he was doing, and I rightly could have defended myself and told him how rude it was. But Swamiji said that this is the way to learn humility, and to just lose the grip that the ego has on us is to not defend on yourself. He was being accused of just horrible crimes at one time. He never spoke in his defense. But he did want, I believe, and in fact he did want others to defend him. So this doesn't mean to not defend a good friend who you're loyal to, who's being attacked. But in your own situation, the whole goal of life and the spiritual path is to lose the ego. And it's almost a great blessing from God when these things happen, to dislodge the ego from our soul, from our mind. And so when these rude things happen in your life, try to develop the attitude of gratitude. And just be grateful that God is watching over you and is trying to help you and trying to dislodge this ego, because once the ego is dislodged more and more, you will find that the divine flows through you more and more easily. And this is what the great saints and masters have done, because it's such a strange thing with the great saints and masters. It's not that they are great, it's that almost the opposite. It's almost like they are actually really, really small, or have gotten completely out of the way so that the divine can flow completely and purely through them. So it's a strange sort of a paradox that these great saints and masters are not great at all. They're less great because they've gotten out of the way completely and are allowing the divine to flow through them. And that's all we need to do. In giving, in serving, in loving, just let the little self step out of the way, make every act an act of self-offering of the little self into the divine self of God, serving God. And this is the way to freedom. This is the way to spiritual freedom, greatness in a way, but it's not that we want to become great. We want the greatness of God to flow through us. And this tiny little crusty, flinty-hearted ego just to step aside. And so practice this in your life. Learning, one, to not defend yourself or react strongly when a blow comes to knock the ego out of ourselves, but also proactively to give ourselves in grateful service, in giving, in loving to others, in the Spirit of God. And in that way, the ego starts stepping aside and God's grace and power starts flowing through us. This is the way to divine freedom. And this beautiful book, Autobiography of a Yogi, shows us the way with all these beautiful teachings. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.